for STEAM Career Day. Molly and I became STEAM teachers about 2 years ago. Our principal, who's actually in the room, came to Molly and myself and said, hey, we want to start this new class. Would you all be willing to teach it? Of course, Molly and I both were like, yes, we love a challenge. Yes, we want to do this. So when we went into, I guess it was last year, we became members of the Greg Ed program here at Greg, and through the endeavor, we were exposed to a lot of different avenues for our classrooms, but still not every grade level in our school was exposed to what a STEAM classroom was. We go grades 6 through 8. So Molly and I pondered and decided that we would like to have a career day for our students to get them involved in all avenues of what STEAM was really about. One of the first things that I emphasize to my students is college is not for everyone. You do not have to go to college to be successful. So we come from a small town like many of you, and we decided that we wanted to bring in local vendors from our county that could show students what jobs were available to them. So that's hence why we got the name for our STEAM Career Day. So every vendor that we had was locally from our small town. We have a Walmart and 2 stoplights, and that's about it. But there's so many more jobs out there than just those 2 stoplights in that Walmart. And that's what we wanted our students, grades 6 through 8, to see and to be exposed to. Exposure, just like he was talking to us about this morning, exposure is very important for our students. So here we are.
So first thing we did was we hosted a PD with our teachers. We wanted to get them involved too, but we also wanted them to be able to integrate STEM in their classrooms, not just in science classrooms or math classrooms. So we wanted to be able to integrate those across all disciplines. So we had our teachers to do an activity, well, same one that we have here today, just to show them that those can be integrated into all disciplines, like I said, not just the ones that we think about on the daily. So at our STEAM Career Day, we had 7 local vendors. We have also already started making our list for next year for the vendors that we want to add to our career day. We want to make this a yearly thing. Each group of kids, they went to different stations. We had it set up where they went to different stations. Each company or business talked to them, told them about their duties, how they related to science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And then also next year we want to add some regional vendors, not just local to our community, but maybe spread out just a little bit and add some regional vendors. Rendi went to the Sky Launch fair, and she's like, oh, there's some cool ones, so that we need to add those stairs. And then also at our career day, we had a student-led station where 8th grade students demonstrated. They talked about to our 6th and 7th grade students about what they do in the STEAM lab, especially our 6th graders. They showed them how they worked with their rovers. They actually demonstrated the next step to this activity and allowed the students to play with those while we were there at our group. So some of our vendors that we had a pharmacy, Tompkinsville Drug, we have veterinarian, Monroe Veterinary Service, Cleary Construction. We had our 4-H extension office to set up, Twin State Utilities, and also South Central Kentucky Community and Technical College came for their nursing program, because that's a very popular field for our community. Here's just some pictures of the different booths that we had at our career fair. And then here is our student-led station, and I'll let Rendi talk about that.
All right, so with hosting the career day, again, our whole idea was to involve our students in careers related to STEAM, okay? Not only did we want to involve our teachers and how they could put different contents in their classrooms and do this, but we also wanted to involve our students. So one of our stations was our STEAM project that we did in 8th grade. Now, I got this project from our NASA, which also had to be incorporated in the idea of today. I got this idea off the NASA's website, off the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, and my students were able to create rovers, pasta rovers at that, and which is what you guys are going to get to do in a few minutes. So they created these pasta rovers based on a budget. We did a lot of math, a lot of science, technology, all those things. And so my 8th graders, as you can see here, were, just like I said, this was student led. I kind of opened it up, and then they talked and did and showed their projects and how they worked and what they did in the actual classroom, which was really good for other students to be able to see that. And if you look over here at our table, we actually brought some of the ones that some of my students created based upon the guidelines that they have. Now, I will say this, pasta is very tedious to work with, and it's very easy to break, and my students realize that. You know, it's like saying back up and hunt, like one little piece of spaghetti breaks, boom, we're back at square one. So they realized that, so as you can see, some of them kind of broke on the way here in the car ride because I did not speed because it was raining or anything, but we did like pop a few wheels off and stuff. But my students worked very, very hard on these, and so our 6th and 7th graders for sure were able to be exposed to this. But not only were our students traveling around to each station, our teachers were traveling as well. So our teachers were exposed to just as much as our students were. As you can see here at the PD that we had at our school, talking to our teachers about this, we showed them, we didn't actually get to go in and make like a full-blown, we didn't have enough time to make a full-blown pasta rover, but we showed our teachers the idea, how they could relate it to their content area. Because let's just face it, like you can take an activity and you can relate it to anything. It's just thinking outside the box and getting everyone involved and on board to do so. So that's kind of what we did at our teachers meeting, was present the idea to them, show them how you can make a pasta rover. Went through the worksheet, different content areas, and then we also prepared them for what to expect when it came to the career day. And I really feel like that they enjoyed the career day just as much as we did, walking around and seeing all the vendors.
Also, I want to add that at our PD, we also just informed our teachers of the NASA website, because there are so many activities that are available on there that can be incorporated into all disciplines. So that was, I know that was part of what we were supposed to do, but just getting that out there. I don't think that people are aware of that resource that's available to us.
So not only did we host a career day, but we also tried to put our classroom out there too for the community to see and for our students to see, because STEAM/STEM is just now on the horizon. I feel like now everybody is understanding of what it is related to. So for example, every year when we have open house night, students will see that on their schedule and they'll see the word STEAM or STEM, and they're like, well, what is this class about? Like, what are we going to do in here? That's the first questions that we get. So that's also where Molly's and I's idea came from, is to have the career day and to also relate our classroom in there and get our teachers involved.
And you can even also relate it back to the survey that we took for Greg. Like, on that survey, it said, like, ask students about STEM careers, and they weren't very knowledgeable on that as far as that goes.
So, all right. So then, along with the Endeavor class that I'm taking, I'd already seen this activity and was already doing it in class, but then I had to go in and make like a digital notebook for my students to keep up with progress. So this is the activity that we want you guys to do. If you look in your little tubs here, you're gonna see, you can go ahead and pull out your tacky glue, so you'll have it there, and then you're gonna see some glue dots. This is some things that you're gonna need for your activity. Miss Molly's gonna go ahead and pass out your worksheet, and I'm gonna talk about the worksheet for just a moment. Now, I kind of like made this worksheet up myself. I pulled some of the things off the NASA website, and then I kind of made the rest of it up myself. So it's one of those things, like you don't reinvent the wheel, but then, you kind of do a little bit. Now, on my poster that I have up here where my students were talking from at the actual career fair, I've got the standards listed. You can go the science route with it, technology, obviously, engineering, you're making it. Art, how can you make this art? Well, I had students to make it as creative as they wanted it to be, personal to them, even with pasta, okay? So I related it to art.
I was gonna say, and even some of them took markers and colored on them, drew things on,
Yeah, and then ELA, when it's talking about like reading, a lot of reading, you can also relate it back to writing. At the very end, we do a writing about this, which you could do different. And then history, we started out with talking about going going to Mars and, the last time that we had been in the moon. So we did a little history lesson there, talked about, the 1969, back when we first went to space and all these stuff. So a lot of history involved in that too. The engineering design process is one thing that we like to cover as well. In our classroom, obviously, it's kind of like a scientific method, going back to science, all different steps. So here we are at step one, ask, we have a problem. Ms. Molly put that in there for us. For time purposes, because I really want you all to build these today and see, I'm gonna kind of move on. But if you look at your worksheet, you're gonna see where you need to go ahead and you need to design your rover in this space. So that's what I'm gonna ask you all to do right now. If you have a pencil or a pen, when you think of a Mars or a moon rover, what comes to mind? What is something you think could maneuver on an extraterrestrial object? And then my students obviously start designing their own, start drawing it out. And I always remind them that we're not in this classroom to be artists, okay? Everyone's is gonna look different. The whole goal is you become successful, whether it's from the paper to your actual project.
Rendi and I have also talked about this a lot in our STEAM labs. Students instantly want to grab your materials and just start working. Even though they have no idea what they're even supposed to be doing yet, that's the first thing that we want, that they want to do. So we are, encouraging that imagine, that plan state, and prior to.
Now, I actually went ahead and attached one of my students, the front of his worksheet, where he did draw it out and he labeled it. Now, before you can do that too, as well, if you notice the bottom, here's where your math lesson comes in. It says, like all NASA projects, the Pasta rover must stay within a budget. Your Pasta rover budget is $60 million. The students are like blown away when you say $60 million. You may use as much pasta and candy as you can afford. Glue is considered an incidental expense. So if you look down there, lasagna, one piece of lasagna is $10 million, okay? So if you were to go back and you were to look at this actual project right here, so boom, there's $10 million. Mint candy, I didn't have any mint candy, so that's why we use bottle caps, but students do the same thing, $5 million. Spaghetti, $2 million. Panini, ziti, rigatoni, $4 million. Manicotti, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correct, I'm not Italian, $8 million. And then various other pastas for $500,000. So my students went through and they made their budget based on the different types of pastas that we gave them. And then I told them that they could kind of work hand in hand with these two as far as drawing and then budgeting. And they realized that budgeting was really, really hard. Like, they needed to know a lot of math in order to budget for that. So I'm gonna let you all do that at this time, budget, and I'm gonna show you the type of pasta that we have for this activity. You're all familiar with bow ties, we know what those are. The penne, or panini, however you want to pronounce it.
Manicotti.
The ziti, a lot of students didn't know what that was, so that was one that I actually had to pull out and show them. I'm not used to eating my different pastas myself, other than about spaghetti. And then we have the big lasagna noodles, and then we do have the lifesaver candies for your wheels, okay? So right now, go ahead and start budgeting for yours, and you may start your drawing as well. Now, you're thinking, okay, so what's my end goal, okay? What is my end goal? And I always like to present this stuff to students and then I want their questions. So that's what I was kind of waiting for, but I know we're on the time frame here. So, my students are like, so Ms. Rendi, what does our rover have to do? What's our end goal here? Your end goal is that your rover must roll. That's all it has to do, okay? It must roll with the wheels that it has. And I made a little ramp so mine would roll a little bit better for my students. But all it had to do was actually roll. And again, it rolled down the ramp, and then we were able to do like distance and look at distance and calculate speed with distance divided by time. But yeah, I had a ramp, and I'll show you how I did the ramp. I basically used this poster, tilted it over, taped it to the table, okay, and then just had to roll off the ramp. All right, so that's your end goal, is that your rover by the end of the session must roll.
Which I know we're in just the planning stage, but an extension activity to go along with this, and we'll show you that at the end, was to, as far as the improvement step of the engineering design process, was that then students had to create a cardboard rover that was self-powered. But
Yeah, and you will see that on the back of the worksheet, we will talk about that too. So while you're focusing on your design and your, budget, we're laying some of this out, and you're more than welcome to come up here and see what you need to at first, and then we'll let you get your own supplies. Now, we used hot glue in my classroom, we didn't have any of the tacky glue at the time, you just use what you have, and I had a lot of hot glue guns and a lot of hot glue that was bought for our classroom, so that's why we didn't use the tacky glue at the time. But I will say this, hot glue, what happens to pasta when it gets hot? It starts to do what? It starts to get, my students called it wobbly. I'm sure this is getting wobbly or bendy. I was like, yeah, it's kind of melting, but not really, so we had to be really careful with our hot glue.
I actually like those situations when it comes to class, students, you know, being able to, when they figure something out like that, it's like, haha, you know.
Wow, what should we do now? Now, as far as our teachers, when we were going through this with them, we went through the math lesson, obviously, on how to budget. Okay, that was a big one. I didn't realize it, but students, when it comes to big numbers, even like 60 million, like place value was a big thing for them. Okay, adding and subtracting without a calculator, because again, in my classroom, I tell them to clear their desk. The only thing you can have is a pencil, because otherwise you're doing everything with a pencil or hands-on. So that was a big ordeal too. Secondly, when it comes to the design portion, okay, that kind of goes along with the technology and designing it to actual roll, like how many wheels can I afford, how many pieces of lasagna do I need, just different things. So then when you flip it over on the back, I see some of you all have your designs a little bit. When you flip it over on the back, you're going to see, again, another math lesson. Rover 1, which is the pasta rover that you're making, we did distance divided by time, and that is known as rate, okay? What's another word for rate in a math classroom? Speed, exactly. So then we get into vocabulary. I focus very heavily on vocabulary with my students, and that's how you can pull the ELA in. I'm all the time trying to tell them, and excuse me, in my classroom, you can see words such as rate or speed, and it's interchangeable with the math classroom or in the science classroom. So that's also another good way to incorporate that as well. And so then on the back half, the students actually had to conduct the experiment themselves, okay? And they did all the trials on their own and all the above. So right now, I do want you all to make your own pasta rover. So we're gonna stop there, zip it, and I want you to come up and get some supplies and just see if you can make your own pasta rover, okay? Up here at the table. I'm gonna go ahead and lay out the meat candies. Yeah. All right, come and start getting your supplies, and you guys are gonna put yours together with the tacky glue that's at the table.
Or the glue doll.
Yeah, or the glue dots, there are glue dots on your table. Your glue is on, your glue layout, lasagna. And I always tell my students, I will never ask them to do anything that I would not do. Okay, if they do it, I do it too. I design and I make one as well. So there was a lot that actually went into our actual career day as far as pulling in an activity for it, pulling our teachers in and getting them to buy in, because I know sometimes it's hard to get all your teachers to buy into what you're doing. And if you need help on that, I will help as well. Gabe, have you done this one in your classroom yet?
Not the cost one, I've been the one, where you did
The cardboard,
yeah.
yes, we did the cardboard. But this one is harder, so I like starting out
You
hard
what?
first.
You did,
We use Wayne.
okay.
It's hard to find, I don't have.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Oh, okay, we don't,
An
all
hour
degrees are
away.
closest
An
to
An hour away.
We did.
So I did a Walmart pickup for all the stuff that we needed that day.
Yeah, I try to get everything in Walmart. Mine was just make it as least possible.
Yeah.
Everything else is probably-
Yeah.
I would go Walmart pickup person's like.
Yeah, it's a lot of pasta. We're having Italian night, you know?
I feel like I have to defend myself. It's weird, I get it.
Yeah.
I just have to be at Kroger's, like,
Yeah.
they just call something.
I'm gonna write that down. And
Yeah, I know, that's what I was gonna say.
But
Is that
yeah,
never gonna work?
they start stuffing pasta.
Yeah, then they really start seeing it.
Oh, and then they're like, can we break this? I said, it's yours, it's your money, you just spent $6 million, and they're like, trying to barely break it. It's really easy, like it's really gonna make a difference.
I make a track where it just cardboard, cut a piece of cardboard and put it down, and it keeps the wheels, because mine just, they make where the wheels are at constraints, so they get down the track, and this way, they want to race that way.
That's, yeah.
Yeah,
course, mine was leading up to the
I
access
think
park.
that's a damaged, lasagna.
You made that, that's a discount.
Can't fix it.
We'll sell out in 55 minutes. Well, they were just really hung up at first, though, over the budget, like, they could not get over them having a budget, and I was like, this is what it's really like if you were to go to NASA or things like that. How do you think those engineers start off with a budget? They can't just throw things together, they kinda have to know what they're working with, so you need to know what you're working with here. I know, we have hair dryers in our classroom, and we should have brought them.
I
So
went
it would
to
dry
grab this
quicker.
morning, but I forgot.
If the teacher needs something in school, I found out that they send them to our classroom first. If the
Oh,
teacher-
We have the most random things.
Yes, I don't care what it is, a bag of rice, a hair dryer, anything, they send them to our classroom, yes, they send them to our classroom.
They come and get my hair dried all the time.
Bobby pins, I mean, it's, anything they need, they come to our classrooms. And the conversations that you hear as the teacher while you're walking around students and working on these and trying to make these is really great. Like, they're really, engrossed in what they're doing, totally engaged, 100% engaged. Even if they're having those sidebar conversations that we talk about, still engaged when they're trying to do this because it is a very hard job. And as a teacher, I check their budget off first, and then they have to come to the store to buy it, and I'm the store, and I have it all lined out across the table and all the prices, and so I check their worksheet, then I allow them to get what they need from the store, I check them out, and then they're able to go and start working on their project. I'm not gonna do that to you all, but.
Well, and another thing that you could do, which this is a little bit time consuming, but maybe you could, as far as math goes, I've actually given my students actual fake money that they have to come to the store to use. And they love that. They love that. And it's always a competition, who has the most money at the end, and like, that they love the actual fake money.
And another thing too, like, how does this all relate back to our career day? And that's what I said. Molly and I wanted to get exposed to our students, okay? So what better way than at a career day expose what we did in our actual classroom? Because it always ties back to that engineering, okay? To those jobs that are at NASA, different things like that. And to expose it to our teachers. That way in their classrooms they can understand. Just the other day at lunch, our history teacher was like, you guys get to have all the fun, like, nothing's fun about history, like, nobody cares who at Westward, nobody. They do, they really do if you can relate it to a hands-on activity, if you can make it fun, okay? So, why not pull some of these activities out and talk about those times and what was going on? History-wise, the science teacher that was there at my school, he talked about, like, in the later 1960s, early 1970s, where she had the Vietnam War going on. So he talked about all that. He talked about us going to space in 1969 and landing on the moon. He talks about all those Apollo missions. So a lot of history, the students don't even think about. They're just engrossed in listening and learning. So a lot of different contents can be drawn into just this one activity. And I love going around and questioning them and asking them if they think it's going to work. Some of them are very positive, and some are like, there is no way on earth that this thing's going to roll.
You ever write a redesign, like you want to try to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then after they did the pasta, we seen what worked and what did not, and we then moved on to the cardboard, because I wanted them to actually engineer something that powered on its own. And like you said, you all have done that one with the rubber bands, and that one's a really neat one. And that's where speed really picks up, and I even did a mock setup, and I made Mars terrain for them. Like, I did like the rocky area, the sandy area, and they had to travel across it with their rovers. But yeah, I love starting out with this one because it is so hard. Because as middle school students, you know, they're kind of like me, they're chatty Cappies, and they like to move around. And what happens when you move around a lot? You knock things off, and when it knocks off your floor, guess what? It breaks. So,
Yeah, sure. Broken pasta.
I will say this much, I really did have to butter up my janitor after this activity, because we did have a lot of broken pasta, because like I said, they're middle schoolers. And once they break a piece, you know, they had to make sure they had saved enough money so they could go back and buy another piece. Because I had one student, they were completely done, and he was turning around and he was so excited when he accidentally knocked his partner's hand and out the floor it went, broken in half. So, back to square one they went.
I'm sure the janitors hate both restrooms.
Always a good.
We try. times that day though. Students wrote 3 times. You guys remember, right? Oh, all right. Okay. Feeling good about it. And I like the tacky blue, like I said, versus the hot blue. That's just what I had in my classroom for us to use already, so that's why we went with that.
Which the tacky blue seems to dry faster, especially when you have a hair dryer, as opposed to Elmer's glue. That stuff
Yeah,
is
no.
useless.
Yeah, in our
In
classroom. And also, talking about going to Kroger, like our Walmart did not have any lifesavers, like in a big bag like this. You could buy them in like the little bag for $5 versus, you know, the bigger bag, so that's why we went to bottle caps. Makeshift.
Vanilla wafers, I was thinking something round, so I bought vanilla wafers, like, I was gonna try that.
Yeah.
And then just have a big Kroger's, of course, school bought all the other
Right.
stuff, and then I was at Kroger's like, well, I'm gonna use wagon wheel.
Wagon wheel.
But I was
Something
looking
like
for, something cheap, something round, and the cheapest thing was, what, vanilla wafers.
Wafers.
Yeah.
Not so much with this one, but especially when you have things that have edible materials, they want to eat them.
I'm good with that, thank you.
Now, it did take us a whole class period to construct these after we did the design and after we did the math with it, so it did take us a whole class period to do that. I don't know how long your classes are, I think ours are like 50 minutes now?
Yeah.
50 minutes. An hour.
In our classrooms, like really 10 minutes is a long time, you know,
Yeah.
like that's,
Oh, yeah.
especially when they're in the middle of working on.
Yeah, it's okay. And then they'll let us take the excess back to our classroom.
It's yours.
Greg can host an Italian month.
There you go. And also on the back too, like we have rover 1 and rover 2, where you go back and you can make a different rover, or you can go back and add or take away from yours. Then the questions at the bottom really make them think, and as our speaker said this morning, it gets them to writing it, it gets them to putting it on paper as well. David, really trying to get his work. Yeah, vocabulary is a big thing in this too.
Yeah, that goes, just makes it so much clearer.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Keep it right
there.
I don't know.
Like I said,
Don't
we,
break it.
Just like, I don't know if you have any of those in your or not, but that's something
Let's see,
to invest in.
mine's a classroom, everybody comes.
Yeah.
Sort of like let it dry. That's all we put our hair dryers in our classrooms, and then you thought about it.
That's really smart. Totally did that.
Yeah, we both have a hair dryer in our classroom for that
Really
purpose.
smart, because they're always like, can't do anything yet, it won't dry,
It won't dry, Well, it's just like the other day, we were actually, we were doing an edge elastic, I think, a student had his water bottle on his desk, well, he knocked down his math booklet, you can only allowed to get one math booklet. So here I am, while they're doing edge elastic with my blow dryer, trying to dry his math booklet, so he can make the math class. So random crazy things like this, like, works out well.
Have little bits, murder. Kids.
Now, did your wheels work well, or were they like, they were like really rounded?
They did.
No, I think you make that.
You had to go, most of them work, but like, they figured out you had to, make the way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
If you did the solid, it would tire.
Right. And I actually talked to our history teacher, he talked about, the assembly line of a car, okay? How can, he's like I said, my class is boring, it's history, and I'm like, well, you talk about manufacturing, and you pull in Henry Ford, you talk about how the first vehicles were made, and you do an assembly line. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to a rover, like you said, you have to have axles, okay? You have to have wheels, you have to have, the body, you have to have a certain weight, and, so different things. So all content areas can be brought into a simple activity if you just think outside the box a little bit. So that's what I tried to present to him, and I think he's actually gonna do an activity like that. Is it rolling good?
Trying to get them to stay on, come in.
Now, some of my students even got it.
I was gonna say,
They got hubcaps, I guess it was hubcaps, it was not this one now. So they wouldn't come off.
well, and two, some of them did it like this. So this is what's spinning, and then they were able to
So this
glue
one
the lifesavers to the end, so that they weren't. And then also, like, if you have something that will drop, you
I
can
know, that's what I'm
like
saying, it's
sort
just
of
neat.
like a blob of glue on the end, so it
Yeah,
doesn't
this one,
roll
use that one as the actual
completely off.
thing. Yeah, the
So
wheel.
that's something easier. I thought about that. Should have done.
Okay, and so then as the math teacher, I did a mini math lesson, and we talked about speed, and how it was distance divided by time. Also, another word for it, which we're using in my classroom, is actually rate, and those are interchangeable words. Distance, we actually measured in inches instead of centimeters. So we changed that up a little bit too, but you can do whatever, because we're going by the tiles in the floor. And every tile is 12 inches, so the kids knew that, and so they could kind of guess how far theirs went. So we actually did distance in inches, and then we did time, and then we divided the two and did inches per second. And that was really, really neat for students to figure out that as well. And then, like I said, step 4 was going back and improving, which I know you guys are waiting for yours to dry, so I'm going to continue to talk. They did go back and they were able to do that, but then, like I said, I wanted to change it up a little bit for rover 2, and they had the option to either stick with their pasta rover, or they were able to use the basics from what they had their pasta rover, that knowledge, and build one out of cardboard. All of them chose for cardboard, because I think they were a little over the pasta at that point, because like I said, as middle school students, being rambunctious and moving around, a lot of broken pasta happened, and even, some of it was meant, some of it wasn't. So a lot of them chose or opted to do the actual cardboard, and I wish I brought one of them. I think I left it in the vehicle this morning. And that one was powered actually with the rubber band, is what Gabe said in his classroom, and that was a neat one, a neat activity as well.
It was fun to watch the 6th grade and the 7th grade sort of just, because this was, done in 8th grade, but, just at our STEAM day to sort of try to figure out, like, when we said it was self-powered, you could see their wheels turning, like, that doesn't have a motor on it, like, how is that self-powered? So, and then you could, like, it was fun to see, once they showed them, that's cool.
I even added some pictures of some of my students actually working on theirs. One of them was working on the design, the other one, and you can make this a partner activity, or it could be an individual activity. I always give my students that option, but I never want to put more in a group than is needed, because you often have those students sitting there that are doing nothing and kind of like me, just talking the entire time instead of actually working. So I always say you can either be a partner, or if you're one of those students who'd rather work independently because you know your partner's not going to carry the weight. So I say solo or partner, and I have some that are solo and some that do it as a partner activity as well. And then, like I said, we didn't actually get to do the actual activity when it comes to our career day at the actual STEAM project station. That's where my 8th graders came in, and they showed the 6th and 7th graders what they had done, and actually demonstrated to them what their rover could do, what it could not do, what they had learned, what their experiences were.
They talk about things that they might change.
Yes, and one thing that Molly and I would like to change for our next year is we only allowed 5 minutes per station, okay? That was a little, we thought, 5 minutes. Well, it kind of goes by rather quick when you're trying to talk to like 15 middle schoolers at a time, and if they have questions. So that's one thing that we have learned from our career day, and also even from our 8th grade students presenting at our career day at our STEAM station here. 5 minutes just wasn't quite long enough. So we're going to make that tweak for next year too, and make the stations just a little bit longer, along with having other ones. I also see the wheels different.
Did you talk about like terrain and how they, okay,
Yes.
cause I see they've designed.
Yeah,
Now-
some of them have, like, took the cardboard and made their own wheels.
Yeah.
My 8th graders, that was the most favorite thing that they talked about when they talked about to the younger students, because they told them they had 3 different types of terrain before they could get traction. They talked about the smooth terrain, they talked about the terrain with sand, and they talked about the terrain with rocks, and how their wheels needed to be adjusted so it could travel across all 3, because when you're on Mars or the moon, you know, the gravity plays a big role in that, but you know, your wheels are what's gonna cause you to carry across that terrain. So that was one that excited them the most, was the different types. And then again, they realized that they struggled cutting cardboard too, and making it the shape that they wanted it to be. But again, we took all these things that you were seeing right here and tied it into one career day. And that's what I felt was so important for us, is that we had that PD with our teachers who were, you know, my principal here, Mr. Clemens. I said, hey, could you like please have our teachers to meet in the library like at 3 o'clock today? And it was like 2 o'clock. He's like, sure. He said in the hand, and they came and they listened and they were really open. When we went to have our career day, we actually bused 400 middle school students to our local extension office. Our gym floor was being redone for basketball season, so we didn't want to like mess up the floor or anything. And it was actually a really good opportunity for our students to get out of the building and go to our local extension office, which is fairly new, and most students had never been there or ever seen it. It was behind our local Walmart, and you know, they had no idea what it even encompassed, or you know what the building even was. So that was a really neat experience too for students to get out of the building, view our extension office, and know that there's actually jobs in our extension office. You know, you have your ag agent, your 4-H agent, you know, you have your secretaries, receptionists, things like that. So that was a really good eye-opener too for a lot of students. And then again, going back to our vendors and having them there, and local jobs, you know, indoors and outdoors. And we're hoping for next year, like Miss Molly said, to have an upstairs where we have local vendors, and then the downstairs where we have vendors like Fruit of the Loom told me that they would come. Holly Performance said that they would come. Very Electrical, you all may have heard of some of these. These people are really, really nice, I will say that, and they are more than welcome and open to come and work with your students and to show students, you know, avenues in their jobs. So I thought that was really, really
Some
nice.
of the other local vendors that we've got on our list, which, we actually had, a local person that Airplane College, he was supposed to have come, but he was unable to come. So, that was one that we wanted to include. There's a lady who grows her own flowers and sells those, and also like vegetables and things like that, produce. Mechanics, we even want to include McDonald's or, one of the fast food restaurants in town, to, you know, show kids that these things are related to, you know, all jobs really. I can't think what else is on our list.
For the second one with the cardboard, was that the list that you gave, that time they just got that material, and it wasn't
Yes.
a buy budget?
Yes,
Okay.
you just got that material. And that's because they kind of already in their mind knew things that worked and did not work as far as like the force and different strengths and constraints that happen. So that I just say this is the only material you have. Now, let me show you that, which is another good idea. When so for example, for the wheels, they knew that their wheels could not be any bigger than 5 inches, so they could cut that cardboard down to however they wanted it to be, but it couldn't be bigger. That way everybody was the same. That was, you know, our variable there. That you know, the control group, I guess you could say that you could have kept the same as that. As everybody had started out with a 5-inch wheel, and you could cut it down to 1 inch if you wanted it to, and some of them did. Anyway, they did, but everybody started out with 5 inch, and then for the body, everybody started out with a 6 inch, and again, some of them, you know, maneuvered them different ways as far as the body, but everybody had to start out with the same size, and again, you could make it what you wanted it to, but we all started out the same, so that was a good one too. Before we wrap things up, okay, I'm gonna come back, Miss Molly and I are gonna come back, we wanna see your rover roll, okay, you're gonna be able to take this with you, hopefully take it back to your school, into your classrooms, for your teachers as well. Okay, so let me show you what one.
So like, maybe you could have, I don't know.
And again, I shut up, I just walk around the room. They are the ones who, like, as you can see, middle schoolers, typical, design this themselves.
Got 'em. Since you have it, you know, within this, you could have got it.
Yeah.
But see, also, since you have it in this, you could have made these wheels stationary because then your whole axle would have.
Alright, so a little way, okay, I just want to run, see if they roll.
That one didn't make it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's what your teacher does, she goes, oh, that's their next start over again.
Oh, yeah, it does. Good job, good job. That's a good one.
I know y'all are middle school, but can you talk about how, just to pick your brain, how you could modify for elementary?
Yes, okay, so, elementary,
A lot of stuff on that jet propulsion lab, even with middle schoolers and high schoolers, you can do second grade stuff if
Yes.
they get into it.
And you can actually filter it by, like, grade
a
level.
lot of my activities probably are lower level, and all I do is just add in that vocabulary or add in that math lesson to make it grade level appropriate. Like, I know that third graders could actually do this activity right here as far as the activity, but they're not gonna, and even the $60 million budget, that's place value, that, starting, I'm not really for sure, I need to go back to my, I'm not an elementary school teacher, but I'm sure that in third grade, they're probably gonna start with place value or something like that. So you can modify it, especially for elementary
Well,
school students.
maybe like for this activity is, on the, NASA is, I think it was labeled K through 8.
Yeah.
But maybe you could do it with Legos instead of pasta. That would be easier to work with for younger
Yes,
kids
for
as
younger
opposed
kids.
to
Because
pasta.
I forget, I don't know what age they start like cutting and gluing and all that.
Well, they don't have.
Well, it's a mess, but
Yeah.
it would just be, I think they would break a lot, like it would
Right.
be frustrating for them.
Yeah.
And it was, as a middle school student, I see more frustration out of every student that I had with this particular activity, and that's why I started with it, because I knew it was gonna test their patience. And sometimes character building, it goes a long way as middle school students too. So that's why I wanted to start with this one, and to test their patience.
And they're
just to see.
they're not Legos, but I can't even think what they're called, but they're like those little stick things that
Connects,
snap together.
maybe.
Yeah, connects.
Yeah.
You could maybe do it with that.
You've seen the flakes? Yeah.
Like,
Flakes are
that might be
just- Yeah, they're just little, they're round and they hook together.
Oh, yeah, they look like
I
snowflakes.
didn't know what those were
Yeah.
called, but I have some of
Flakes,
those.
Yeah.
And then, after our career day, after everything was wrapped up, and the next day in my classroom, this is how Molly and I brought it back to our classrooms. As my bell ringer that next day, I asked a couple of questions like, did you enjoy your day? Please explain why. What was your favorite station and why? And what could we do different for next year? And all of my responses were, yes, they enjoyed it. Most responses of the common consensus I got was the vet up there. Of course, she had the dog. She brought her dog, and she also had different types of animals in little jars, that preserved. And she talked a lot about the vet services, but that was their number one favorite one. We come from a rural community, so vets, dogs, and talking about animals was a good one. And then my third question was, what can we do to make it better next year? And a lot of students said more vendors. Like, they wanted to see more jobs. They wanted to be exposed to those. And I say, you think about being exposed to those. That's what you do in our classrooms. My classroom, and I always say Miss Molly's classroom, you are doing these jobs, whether we're doing a space unit. My next unit that I'm doing is natural disasters, okay? I could have brought in a fireman, police officers, things like that, and talk about catastrophic events and how they affect us. The jobs are out there, so the science is out there. Technology, engineering, math, ELA, it's all out there. And then what did they have to do after they experienced it? They had to take it from here and write it down. And for those students, I'm a special ed background teacher. I picked up that pencil and I said, okay, tell me about your day. How was it? What happened? And I wrote it down for them. That way they were there, So I didn't want to leave any students out. And as a consensus, all students enjoyed it. And Miss Molly and I were talking about in the spring having a career day focused on jobs in the outdoors. And so we talked about bringing in our fish and wildlife, agriculture. We're from a rural community. All they see is farming anyway. But why not, those kids that actually don't get to go out and do it. Farming, coming from a farming home, is expensive. Okay, you're making money and it is really expensive. So a lot of kids don't really get to see what goes on behind the doors when you got a dead cow laying here or things like that. So exposing them to those outdoors industries as well. What were some other ones that we talked about?
Well, of course, Kelsey, that she raises succulents and lots of, like flowers. She goes and cuts her flowers, and then she goes and sets up and she sells her flowers. So that's interesting. A lot of places do that now, but a lot of places purchase their flowers, and I just think that that's pretty cool that that she actually does it herself. And then, of course, it is I'm sorry.
You're good.
Real quick, going back to I wanted to say this much. The person that was coming to do the airplane, he started out as one of our middle school students. Through our after school program, we exposed him to aviation. And we developed an aviation program in our local county with our small airport. And so he got his airplane license by the time he was graduating high school to fly planes. And now he flies planes from our local airport, and he takes a lot of people to like Destin and Panama and just on vacations and things like that. And he makes good money doing that, and he's bought his own plane. So that was a really good one that I hope he makes it to our spring career day. And I know we're running out of time, and I appreciate you all so much for giving us ideas and also listening to our idea of a career day. And I hope that you all have enjoyed it as much as we did. A lot of work, but it was truly